obviously the main things to do is shoot with it, and you'll find out naturally like what it can do to an extent. The thing with like camera systems, things like that now, is that they're so complex and they can do so much. Like it's, I find out new things that my camera can do sometimes. Like, oh my god, like I wish I'd known that for the shoot, or whatever.
Got you.
Like there's always some really good resources out there, like especially on the likes of YouTube, like on techniques that you can use on things like that. And I'd definitely say that that's quite a key one. Like not necessarily any specific channels, but if you sort of look into the model or make or whatever, and then separately to that, it's not just what the camera can do, it's what you can do with the camera. Like technique, understanding composition, like where people should be, like trying to create a story with the camera is something that you almost have to learn a bit yourself, but also like you can very easily get lost in that if you just solo as well. It's something though that while people can advise you, it's not something that you can teach too much because it's a subjective thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like largely an art form, so
it's interesting you talk about like the story of it. I think there's something in that, the fact that it's really like a visual narrative. Like, what would you say is like things you're inspired by, or like styles that you kind of enjoy in your work?
Well, I mean, it's the only problem I'd have with that is that there's so much variety in my work, and that like
so it's different.
But like generally like say you have an idea of what you're doing. So if you have a rough brief of a client or an understanding of their business or what they're going to do with the shoot, you can try and base what you're going to do then off that sort of thing. So for example, I made a video called Angel in the House for an event at Vintage Viola in Warrington a couple of weeks ago, and with it being a vintage shop, it's like classic looks and things like that. I as well as using my regular Sony camera, which is high quality slow motion shots, things like that, like tracking shots. I also took a little video camcorder that I bought for $5 from this sort of weird look like antique shop, because it had that old sort of grainy like 90s look to it. Like it adhered to the topic of the video, and I think that's important. Like a lot of the shots were like really zoomed in, like shaky, like look like, because that's what sort of we were going for in terms of the party itself and like the runway that they had. So it's just little techniques like that where you've just got to understand the demands of your project, and then somewhat how you can execute them. And then obviously if you understand that early enough, you can then look at the influences of either like the time period or like the subject matter, and try and implement things related to that in your work.
So I saw you posted on Instagram, I think, was it today or yesterday? Like you collect these like little vintage things, don't you?
Oh yeah. So it's quite fun, really. Like a lot of the times, especially in that video industry, like people can get almost obsessed with like new shiny toys. Like in a modern time, like the equipment does hold up quite well over a few years. Obviously, newer equipment has newer features. But also, like you say, for things like that, like certainly vintage aesthetic and things like that, it's quite big, certainly at the moment as well, and in general. It's always good to have your eye out, like if you're ever like at an antique place or something like that. So like recently I bought a film camera for like £20 that come with a couple of lenses in the bag. It's actually there. That's what I brought.
Okay.
But yeah, so I bought that, and then I went into the same place today and I found an old Polaroid. So, ultimately it's not going to lose any value over time, is it?
And are you going out and looking for these things? Do you have like a few shops that you keep your eye on, or?
Roughly.
Yeah.
There's a couple of good ones in Manchester in there.
Yeah.
There's a camera shop that sells like the old Olympus ones in Manchester, and the fellas in there are really nice.
Yeah, you're always worth a look around. Like it can be anything from like I say, old antique places, car boot sales, things like that. Like you can get all sorts really, but it's it's not necessarily always going to be practical in your work, but there might be projects where it is
like
it
the
has its
Viola
use.
one.
Yeah, like it has its uses, and you're like, oh, actually, I could use that again, for something else. Like it's something that is as much of like a passion thing. It's certainly not imperative. Like and neither equally. Generally, sort of, the industry is quite based on, it's all freelancers basically. So if you are a cameraman, you are bringing your own camera, but it's important not to get obsessed with buying the new thing or you make yourself broke every year.